Peace to the gods. Peace to the gods. How's everyone doing? No, I haven't been on in a while. So I had to get back on the mic and do a report on the state of affairs of things, and that's kind of like a weird um, um, headliner, but I think you'll understand it as I begin to talk about things. I'm sitting here, got this other page open. Turn it off. Okay. Let's talk about some things today. As you know, I've been working very hard and diligently on the new SPC University. It is up and going. Um, got a couple of little minor adjustments that I'm making to it, but I'm really, really happy about the end product as that is concerned. Um, I've been working very, very hard on that. As you also know, I have a Facebook group of about 33,000 members and people in there daily posting about different things and, the website consultations and trying to help people in all kinds of situations. And I have been given a new perspective about the state of affairs as it concerns this space. Um, and what I see happening. And today I'm going to talk about what I see happening as well as try to offer some solutions. I'm not here to disparage anyone or talk negatively about anyone or anything like that, because I think the onus of all of this always rests on the consumer of the information. If you're consuming this kind of content, it's incumbent upon you to understand what your responsibility is, and that is to verify information, look up the definition of words, accurate definition of words, and don't always go along with something because it sounds good. Um, I had a life lesson on that. I had a lot, and you probably, if you've listened to me talk before, you may have heard me talk about this, but it was one time when I was in college and I was on the dean's list. I was doing very well. I was very studious during this time. I had learned how to study. I would read aloud to myself and read the entire chapter, look up the words, and it really helped me with my comprehension with a lot of information. So I think I was in A plus certification class. I can't. No, I think it was a networking class. I can't remember exactly, but it was one of those. And I was going to night school with a lot of other older gentlemen who were in the military, because there was a military base near the school, and a lot of the people who worked in the military, they were about to get out of the military and retire. They were going and taking classes to get ready to get back to civilian life. All right, so I'm in there with them, and then I'm in there with a couple of businessmen too. All right, so we got a little study group. I'd say it's about 8 of us in the group, about 8 of us in the study group, and we have an exam coming up, and the professor has given us study questions for the exam, and and then when the answers are in the book, you just got to find them in the book, and it does take a little bit of it's not just like hunt and peck and find. It did require some comprehension about what he was asking for you to be able to locate the answer in the book. And so when we all studying, and we all will talk about a question and we would agree that this is the correct answer. All right, but we got to one particular question, and everybody agreed except me that was not the right answer. And it wasn't because I was being arrogant or anything like that. I just said, no, that's not the answer, man. It's this right here. And I couldn't understand why anyone else wouldn't see that was the correct answer. I'm like, how do y'all think it's this right here? It's no way it's this answer. And I argued back and forth with 7 other guys in this group. And I was being made to look like I was the person, that didn't know what he was talking about. And then we'd already had this continuity and this bond that we had from studying together. So I acquiesced and went along with what they said was the correct answer. All right, so we get into class, and the professor, he then graded the papers, and everybody got the question wrong. Yeah, we all got it wrong. All right, so he's reviewing the questions. He's reviewing, we going one time, and he's reviewing, we talking about the answer and all of that. So then when we get to this one particular question that I argued them down that we all got wrong, I was so, I was like, you motherfuckers, I told you that wasn't the answer. So I just can't wait to get to this damn question. So as soon as he gets to the question, before he say anything else, I raise my hand. I say, Professor, I just wanted to be known that I said it was not this answer right here. I want, I feel like it was this answer right here. And I told him what the answer was, and I'll never forget the look that he gave me. This is a white man, too. He looked at me, and he just gave me this look. He was just quiet. He just looked at me for a long time, and he said, that was the right answer. And he smiled at me. And then what he did this, they don't know he did this, but he did this when I got my paper back after he got back and graded them and went over them and everything. When I got my paper back from him, he gave me the credit on that, 100 on my paper. He gave me the credit for it because I said that was the right answer. He gave me the credit. I never forget that. I'll just never forget that. But I learned a very valuable lesson in life, and that was to, have confidence in my understanding of things. And, don't second guess yourself. Pay attention to that internal voice, that speaks to you. I've learned to listen to that more. And go with your gut also. And, so those things, and I trust myself. You got to learn how to trust yourself. What I see going on in this space is a lot of individuals just following other individuals or teaming up to get other individuals to follow them. Like, they'll come into a group and they will start talking about some ridiculous damn process. And then all of a sudden, yeah, can you DM me on that and shit? It just looked like a whole thing is a damn setup to garner attention to other people. Like, yeah, DM me that too. I'd like to hear, get some more of that information. And it's like, and I'm looking at what they're talking about, and it's just a rehashing of the same old thing, that people have been talking about forever, and they coming on the scene. And I know that the person that is offering the information doesn't have the depth of knowledge concerning the information where they would even be peddling it, trying to sell it to anybody or anything like that. I'm listening to you. I take the time to really read what you say and listen to you. And there are a lot of nuances about this information that a lot of people don't understand. And we're going to talk about some of them. Everything is just not cut and dry with these people because you're dealing with individuals who are trying to conceal something from the general public. All right, so you have to contend with that. All right, you got to get rid of this word fraud. All right, fraud is fraud. They said, well, I was defrauded. No, you were just stupid. You should already know that there isn't any money when you got the damn loan. Federal Reserve notes or promissory notes, fraud, you have to prove intent. And it's hard to prove intent if they publish everything and they have it published and you haven't read it. And that's what I see happening a lot in this space, is that there is information that is published that people just don't read. And it's fundamental things. And this is, unfortunately, the vast majority of the American population. I'm talking about all these social media influencers as well. Like, they don't understand basic, simple things like separation of powers and checks and balances of the government. In every conversation you have with the court system, that has to be brought up. That topic has to be brought up because all branches have their own court system. Article 1 courts, you have military courts, and then you have constitutional courts. So when they just use the word court, that's not telling you anything. All right? There are many different kinds of courts. What kind of court am I in? And this is why you have the protections of the Sixth Amendment. I know the cause of action, but I need to know the nature of the action so I can understand what court I'm in. And then when I can make a determination of what kind of court I'm in, now I know what kind of rules apply to the game. All right, but you don't want to talk about admiralty jurisdiction because it's not admiralty that is concerning. It is the civil nature of the admiralty. All right. Admiralty is a civil jurisdiction, which means it's dealing with something about money. It's about money. And they don't have any money. They're bankrupt. So that is the conversation they do not want to have in their courts at all. And if you don't understand that, if you cannot strategically position your information with that understanding in it, you're not going to be very successful, because they follow some principles. They're going to protect the public at all costs. And if they feel like this information could destroy the public, they're not going to let it get out. They lock you up, hide you, do all kind of stuff. And that hasn't happened to you yet. That hasn't happened to you yet. So it's good to see somebody use pecuniary. I like that, when I use words and I hear people and they repeat them back. Yeah, pecuniary interest in it. Pecuniary just means money, some sort of monetary interest in something. But all this is about money, and it's all commercial. Let me talk about this next too. All right. The reason I don't come down off my high horse on secured party, because, even though people try to attack it, that's not the remedy. They love this word remedy. They only know what a remedy is, but they use it all the time. Get remedy. Can you get me remedy? Start using colloquialisms and, street slang to describe processes and shit, when law is a very exact science. One of the first things that I had to learn is that it is an exact science. Every syllable in a sentence in a law book has specific meaning. Even the preposition, the pronoun, whatever, it has some sort of meaning to it. And so you got to understand grammar to really understand. That's why they only take, English grammar majors and political science majors into law school. Understand why they do that, because you got to have a good foundation in order to springboard into law. But if you're just coming from some position where you was weak in grammar in high school, but now you're going to become some sort of guru and you didn't take the time to strengthen your grammar, no. You are spreading, intentionally or not, spreading misinformation due to your own incompetence. You have to have a very high degree and a very high standard of excellence when you're dealing with information like this, because you're contending with people, these are professionals that you're dealing with. They do this shit for a living, and, and they're not playing about it. It's a very serious thing. And no, this ain't a place where you're just going to get something for nothing. It's like this mindset of entitlement, this entitlement mindset. That's a very dangerous thing, to have an entitlement mindset. You're not entitled to a motherfucking thing. Don't nobody owe you shit. It's people in this space, I feel like that's what they really think in their mind, that somebody owes them something. And I'm here to really just get that out of your mind. Don't nobody owe you a motherfucking thing. Not a goddamn thing. Nobody owe you shit, okay? Anything you're going to get in this life, you're going to earn. You're going to earn it. Ain't nobody going to give you nothing. You're looking for a handout, it's not happening. If you're going to get a discharge, you're going to earn that discharge. You're going to earn that discharge because you're going to have to go to court with it. You may have to argue it. If you argue it, then you need to know how to articulate your position. And in such a way, supported by some sort of legal citation of authority, because the courts like to stay consistent in their ruling. That's why you want to read case law. All right, but if you're going up in their courts looking for some kind of remedy on your end, understand that these are contract courts and they're about agreements, and that's what the agreements are going to look at. And one of the primary agreements that they always takes precedence over everything is this operational presumption that you're a U.S. citizen and you contracted into their space. Or else, why the fuck are you in our courtroom? That's the thought behind it. You gotta strategize for that with an understanding that that's in their mind. You just don't walk blindly in there. I got the remedy. You are hereby forced to give me. That shit is not working, okay? That shit is working. I got experience doing that shit. You have to corner these people. You have to corner them, and you can only corner them with the truth. facts, hard facts, substantiated hard facts, and with questions. Never be in a position where you're answering questions. The person who's asking the questions is the person who's directing someone. And so you have to master that art of how to hit, someone with a question. You always need clarification. Somebody asked me a question in the Facebook group, and I'll ask them a question for clarification because I'm trying to see why is the reasoning that you're asking the question. I need to have your understanding of this topic before I can answer the question properly. So I don't want to answer the question out of context because you might be asking me this question under a different context. And I need to understand, okay, I need some clarification on that. And that also exposes the individual because whether or not they are honestly asking me a question because they really want to receive an answer or some sort of test bullshit. Or, are they fishing for answers or something like that? Well, you throw it back at them and see what they know. If they don't know nothing, now you can deduce from that, okay, maybe they want to learn something or if they know a little bit of something where they're trying to test it to see if I know, I really know or something like that. It's just that things like that, you'll learn, when you start engaging a lot of people with this information and you really understand it yourself, you can gauge who knows and who doesn't know. I know not under any circumstances am I saying I'm the only person that knows this information. Hell, I learned it from other individuals, some very astute and intelligent individuals. All right. But I think that I know enough where I could discern when individuals are fraud. I don't want to use the word fraudsters. I'm going to say like an opportunist. I think that is the most appropriate word, opportunist. I don't like people coming into my Facebook group advertising. I'm going to tell you why, because I built that group up. I was a part of another group, and I was kind of policing that group the same way. People asking all kind of crazy questions and things. I'm like, what is this? This is your understanding of this information? That is woefully incorrect. And the person who owned the group put me out. So I said, okay, I'm gonna build me a group. I'm gonna make it bigger than yours. That's just how I thought, and that's what I did. I made my group bigger than his, but I earned it through my reputation. Because, like, hey, I started on Blog Talk Radio for 7 years. All I did was Blog Talk, where I just let people call in and ask me questions for like 3 hours straight. That's all I did. That's all I did for like 7 years, 3 hours straight, taking calls on Blog Talk. Somebody call in and ask me a question. And I just answer that, go to the next caller, answer their question, go to the next caller, answer their question. So I had a lot of engagement with people and people's understanding of, the information. And I began to assess where the weaknesses were in the information. I also began to understand that this word sovereign citizen has a actual, a realistic application to certain groups of people with certain mindsets. It really does. And that's only because I deal with the UCC. So in dealing with the UCC, naturally, I'm going to have more of an affinity toward business, because for me to embrace it, for me to understand it, I had to embrace business. And I hung around individuals who monetized instruments for real and did things. I got to peek into that life and see what it was really about and get an understanding of what a CUSIP number was for and an ISIN number and just things like that. And that helped me deepen my understanding of the information. And so now I began to understand, well, how is money created? And now I understand how the courts are operating. Everybody's trying to create money. And this is why they call the courts the banks. They're trying to create money. So it's all business. It's all business. Everything. I've read their statutes. I'm looking at people's criminal indictments on the federal level. And always in that indictment is, he violated interstate commerce. Interstate commerce, that's their jurisdictional clause that they put in your indictment to let them know, okay, well, how did you obtain jurisdiction? They're not going to expressly say it, but it's through implication by saying what you did. You sit here and you violated interstate commerce. And we know under Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3, which is the Commerce Clause, that particular power was delegated to the legislative branch of government, Article 1. So now, when I'm taken into this administrative court, the administrative agency, who is actually under Article 2, all the administrative agencies under the executive branch, but they receive what is called a delegation of powers. It's called delegation of powers doctrine, where they delegate some of their legislative authority over, not lawmaking authority, but some of their legislative authority over to these agencies, and these agencies go and enforce their statutes for them. Now, that's how it really works. Now, all these other people, how they talk about it works, not, man, because I studied delegation of powers doctrine. I understand separation of powers. I've read the court cases. All right, all this other stuff you're talking about, it's not how it works. All right, anybody could go to Wikipedia right now and pull up the executive agencies of government. You can see how the agencies are under the executive branch, under Trump. That's why he gives executive orders. The executive orders are to all the executive agencies. He's the head of the military. He's their general. He gives marching orders. That shit don't have nothing to do with you. But these basic civics, you know, I'm seeing that's lacking, and that's really hurting everybody. Like somebody said, they really think that, well, I'm a state national. All right. So what does that mean? I asked the question. I said, okay, so you're a state national. What rights are you exercising that you could not exercise as a U.S. citizen? Well, you know, I don't, you know, when I come into their courts, this, that, and other, start talking about, basically, you don't have no jurisdiction over me. I'm saying, brother, that's not how jurisdiction is obtained. They understand that you're a real living soul. They know there is a distinction between the artificial person, what they like to call a legal fiction, and you. They know that. But that's a pass-through. They have to use that because they need something to operate in commerce through. If you were not operating in commerce, then you wouldn't be around them. See, a lot of people, they think they can live in the city and exercise this sovereignty that they're talking about. No, the United States of America is a very, very large continent with a lot of land out there. You have the ability to go and acquire money and then go and acquire some of that land for yourself and build whatever you want on it and live the kind of life that you want to. But another group of people, they've already decided to do it in places like Dallas, Atlanta, New York, Miami, Los Angeles, Chicago. You know, they've already decided to get together and build a business district where they can come as merchants and come together and trade their wares. And they have created a system within that district that if you choose to participate in it, there are certain rules that you have to abide by. Rules that I think are necessary in order for you to have an orderly society. Okay, I'm not changing up on nothing. I've been saying this forever, and if I do change up, my understanding of things have increased more. Or I've been doing this a long time. But one thing that never changed up is me understanding what minimum context is all about. I would keep giving you the analogy of a castle with a wall around it, and that's the king. You come into that castle and you have your sword. They'll stop you at the gate and say, "What business do you have here?" You know, we come to talk to the king. Fine. Leave your swords at the gate. You can collect them upon your, when you leave. You know, there was statutes and things, the king's edict and things like that that were in operation when you came within that jurisdiction. Well, it's the same thing with a municipality. That's why they have something called municipal law. Because when you come in that municipality, you're falling under a different set of rules, and you, as the real living soul, are bound to abide by them. Like, I don't want you driving through my neighborhood and going through a school zone at 85 miles an hour. I don't. So public safety is the first thing we have to contend with in this business district. So we have to put rules out there to make sure that we have public safety. So your sovereignty is privacy. The only thing privacy means is the right to be left alone. And that can only truly happen if you have your own land. I believe there is a systematic way, if you really want to change things or exercise your privacy, it's going to require that you collect a lot of Federal Reserve notes. It's going to require that. Now, the Federal Reserve notes only represent potential energy that can be transferred into some sort of hard asset. All right? That's how you have to look at that as. Stop talking negatively about money. You're not saying nothing slick talking negative. Oh, those just fiat. You're trying to collect that fiat. You a fool. You're not doing anything but kicking that fiat away from you. Just like you turn a woman off. You got to start respecting the power of the tongue. Because I say peace to the gods all the time. Where do you think your godhood is derived from? It is derived from you speaking things into existence. You're like a baby with an AK-47. You don't even know what you have in your possession. I would love to see some video of OG Yusuf in the courtroom doing his thing. It might be coming soon, I think I got a little traffic ticket I might have to contend with. Who knows? I might get arrested on the side of the road or something. You might see it. I'm amped up for it. I'm ready for it. You might get away. I'm not going to say I'm going to go in the courtroom and just destroy things, but, especially if they know who I am, they don't let me get a chance. They ain't going to let y'all get a chance to see that. But, it's like, yeah, it may happen. It may not happen. It's not going to be for nothing serious because I'm not breaking any laws like that. I might get a traffic ticket or something. Traffic tickets, I look at that as just practice. You can practice with a traffic ticket. I think everybody, if you want to utilize this information, if you get a traffic ticket, that's an opportunity for you to put this into practice because you're not facing any really serious jail time or anything. Most likely it's just a fine or something like that. And, so it's not a lot on the line for something like that. What I would like to see is people going into the courtroom on these criminal matters where they're facing real serious issues and get ahead of it before it devolves into something that's a real uphill battle, like trying to get you out of jail or something like that. No one is saying any of this is easy. It's not easy. The only thing that I'm talking about today is that the necessary habits that you need to have in place if you really want to be effective in this information. Because you're like, okay, well, I'm talking now. Yeah, I think that I think that I'm qualified to be judgmental of other people and seeing what other people are doing things. And I've been doing this about 20 years. And I got a lot of courtroom experience. You might can still find an article of me on the internet. It's called Joseph Jones Mortgages, Protecting Mortgages and Houses, Channel 2 News. It might still be on the internet. They used to have a video up of me on Channel 2 News. And let me tell you a story about that. And that's why I was helping the people with mortgages. And so the mortgages, when I started helping people with mortgages, that helped me get a lot of courtroom experience outside of the criminal aspect of things. Because I had 16 houses dumped on me at one time that were all in foreclosure. And I was fresh out of jail, fresh with this information. I thought, like many of you, you get the information, you think you know what's going on, you think you got it down packed, you're very studious. You have high degree of intelligence. Maybe you can understand the information at a high degree, but I'm telling you, it does not trump experience. Okay. And, you just start to, the real estate, helping the people with all those houses when I had them, going in there. There was one time with Jody Fleischer from Channel 2 News. She came to a house I had. They came in this white van with the radar on top of it, but it didn't have Channel 2 News on the outside of it. So it was kind of like an undercover van, but it still had that radar thing on the front. So it looked, it wasn't inconspicuous or anything like that. But I was in the shower in the house across the street because I owned that house across the, they giving it to me. I didn't really own it, but I was helping the person, both these houses an investor had. And they were looking for me because my name was on the title, but it was on title as a 50% owner. I don't know if they read the title, but you quit claim. So, and the reason I needed to do that is because the houses were in foreclosure. They were not in my name. The mortgage was not in my name. I was not a real party in interest in the matter, nor did I have standing to come into the courtroom. So I had to have an interest in it in order to represent myself in the courtroom in order to defend this property. So that's why the reason for the quit claim. And then they allowed me to stay in one of the properties, the one that was real close to foreclosure, to give me an opportunity to see what I could do. And, because there's a group of investors say, okay, we want to see what you can do. Now, I'd never done this before. This is my first time doing it. But what I understood is that, well, shit, they ain't putting me in jail. I'm just, I've been in court arguing with judges and trying to keep out of jail. Now you're giving me something to do and you're going to give me some money to argue about a mortgage and ain't no possibility I'm going to jail. That's the only thing that I was thinking in my mind because I knew I didn't have any fear of a judge. As a matter of fact, one of the judges said that to me. You know, I was like, I ain't got no fear to come in here and talk to y'all. I know how to handle myself in court. Not saying I'm the best or anything like that, but I think that I know enough that when the judge says something, even when he's trying to do something slick, I can identify it, and I know how to make a record for myself, you know, and what to allow on the record and what not to allow on the record, what to object to on the record. And that's what a lot of people, they haven't gotten that skill yet. They don't understand that, you know, in court, it's about making the record. You're not in there really having a discussion with the judge or the prosecutor. You're there to make a record. That is what your intention is. Because if you make a good record, you can take it to a higher court and get it overthrown. They get stuff turned over all the time, all because of their hubris. You know, they know it's the right thing to do and they still won't do it. Take it to the appeals court. I ain't gonna give it to you. Let them give it to you. You know, some got them little administrators got that attitude like that. You got to be aware of that. You know, like I had an attorney friend of mine tell me one time, he said, man, when I go out to, you know, we were in Georgia. He said, man, sometimes I go out to these country towns where the sheriff, the DA, and the judge all cousins and shit, you know. And he said, man, I don't go there expecting to win. I know I'm going to lose, but I'm going to go there and make a record, and I'm going to get them on appeal. And that was the gem. He also told me, he said, you know, this is during the foreclosure crisis. He said, you know, because we battling them because he was an attorney for the banks in defending against the mortgage, defending against us. So I'm on one side, he on the other side, but we at the bar having a drink. And so we talking, you know, about, you know, the situation. He said, man, it doesn't matter if you're right. Cause I'm talking about securitization audits and, you know, I'm throwing all type of shit at him, you know, and talking about trust and all this. And he said, none of that shit matters. He said, it doesn't matter if we're wrong. Doesn't matter if we're wrong. It doesn't matter. We're going to beat you procedurally. We're going to inundate you with so much paperwork that you're going to lose. He said, we got young guys coming out of law school all the time. He said, we run them 18 hours a day and burn them out. And then when they quit, we go and get some more. We're going to inundate you with paperwork. This is what he's telling me, right? And that's what they do. So you need to understand that. It don't matter if it ain't about being right. You got to get that out of your mind. It ain't about being right. It's about what you can prove. Proof. How are you going to substantiate your position? One of the best gems from Yusuf is the ones about getting your objection ruled on without them changing the subject. And that is true, because that's one of the tricks they like to use, you know, because they like to test to see if you know how to form an objection. So, you know, you're saying something and then they say something, you say objection, Your Honor, and they don't rule on your objection. Like if you go and listen, the best example is a video on the internet called Moors in Court. Got the judge shook. Moors in Court got the judge shook. Now, I love those guys. I had one of them on my show. I love them. I love their spirit. I love how they articulated themselves, how they handled themselves. I love both of them. It's two brothers, right? I think they're from New Jersey or something like that, but I have nothing but love for the Moorish brothers. You know, their spirit and everything, how they handled themselves in that courtroom. However, their inexperience did kind of shine through on certain things. They were prepared. They did express themselves very articulately, and I think they were very firm in their position. However, one place they kept slipping was on the objection. You know, he would say objection, the judge didn't rule on the objection. And I could see how she was, you know, kind of toying with him as kind of like a cat on that particular part by not ruling on the objection. Because if you don't get a ruling on objection, that's called an equivocal ruling. And when the appellate court sees it, they're going to go with the trial court, because silence is acquiescence. And if you don't say anything about it, then you must agree with it. All right? These things you got to understand. So when you say objection and the judge just start talking about some other bullshit, when I say objection, all I want to hear is sustain or overrule. As soon as they start talking about anything else but those, I'll say, okay, they fucking with me. Okay, you fucking with me. Immediately, I just wait patiently. I don't interrupt her. I wait. Jan, I take exception to the honorable judge's refusal to rule on my objection. Would you please enter sustained or overruled into the record so I can preserve the error? You know, I'm like, you got to get your objections ruled on. But these little things like that, these little nuances of the game, they know y'all don't know. And that's why, you know, that's why they know they're going to beat you procedurally every time. They just keep it on procedure. That's all they do. They keep it on procedure. They keep their foot on it, you know, which is another reason why the administrative process is so important. Now, you can develop your own administrative process. I'm not saying that mine is the best, but you need some sort of agreement of facts, is what I'm trying to say, before you get to court. All right, that right way you can move for summary judgment. Because there's no material issue of fact, then we can go to the law. And this is what the law says my remedy is, Your Honor. Because there is no issue on the facts, because they've already been acquiesced to, whether expressly or tacitly. But you need agreements. This is what Matthew 5:25 is saying. Agree with your adversary while you're on the way to court with him. At least he hand you over to the judge hand you over to the bailiff, and the bailiff cast you into prison. I tell you, will not be come out till you pay the very last farthing. That is the admiralty courts. Those are the debtors' prisons. All right, we're talking about debtors' prisons. They still in operation. They still in operation. Debtors' prisons are still in operation. And they had to move undercover because there isn't any money. You know, you had to pay gold or silver to get out of jail. But that ain't in existence anymore. But you're using the very same system, but you had to modify it and to accommodate it for the fact there isn't any money. And because you can't operate only through the Constitution dictates that you have to have gold and silver to satisfy obligations. You had to get us to agree to come into a different jurisdiction. And so you set in motion this Great Depression and got everybody to give up their gold. I mean, everybody was in such a delirium. It was well planned that when you said, give us the gold, everybody just voluntarily gave up their gold to the government. Just gave up all their gold and gave it to them. And when we gave them that gold, man, let me tell you something, that sealed our fate, because the gold was the ultimate expression of privacy, because all our transactions didn't have no taxes attached to it, didn't have anything attached to it. It was just us interchanging between people. If I got cows and I go down to Bob's farm, and give him, a gold piece or something for some chickens or whatever, that's a transaction that was between me and him, and nobody else was involved in it. That was privacy. That's how you maintain privacy. That's how in that movie John Wick, that's what they're trying to express to you. That's the main theme of John Wick, the first movie. They weren't using no telephones or nothing, anything in the system, no modern technology or anything like that. Nothing that would constitute a minimum contact. So all their affairs were private. The government wasn't involved in it. You didn't see no police officers or nothing in the whole movie. Well, except one time when he came to the house and he let them look in the house. Yeah, there's dead bodies in here. But this is outside your jurisdiction. And there are a lot of powerful people operating in this jurisdiction that you don't want to fuck with. So there isn't any jurisdiction without some sort of force to substantiate it. You have to have a land, a military, and money if you want to be a sovereign nation. I'm not here to crash on anything that people are doing, because I do think that people, when they start exploring, they do find new things and new ways of doing things. But that's not what I'm seeing. I'm seeing people trying to take old information and modify it and act as if, like, I have a secret treasury account I'm getting money from. Nigga, stop lying. If you was getting money from that, you think you're going to spread that around where everybody start doing it? I mean, they're going to let that go on. Sometimes you just got to, use your common sense, because they think they talking to like idiots. Who would believe that? If you got access to that type of information, you need to keep your motherfucking mouth shut. And you need to understand what privacy is. The only thing, the most you could do is offer people a pathway to finding the information. Hey, look, you go down that path right there, you'll run right into it. Just go down, right, you're right there. You just go down that, walk that way, you run right into it. All right, peace. Just right down that way. If they don't want to walk down there, that's on them. But the system is going to protect itself. It's going to protect. It's not going to let you bring it down. That's why I think some people think they're going to do. They're going to bring it down. No, they're not bringing it down, and they're not giving you something for nothing. And the reason you're not going to get something for nothing is because the universe, that's against a natural law principle. The universe abhors a vacuum. There isn't any empty space in the universe. Okay, this thing they call dark matter and things like that, all Every infinitesimal part of the universe is occupied by something. Even though we have a word called no thing, but no thing could never come from something. So the no thing had to actually be something in order to create something else, in order for it to take on another form, in order for it to, it's called the undifferentiated into the differentiated. This portion over here differentiated itself from this no thing. But is this no thing really no thing, or is it really something? But all space is occupied. So if you move something, something else rushes in to fill the space. This is why they say you have to give in order to receive. If your cup gets too full, give it away, so we can fill it up with something else. This is a natural law principle that this is why the homeless is people on every corner accepting money, because those are spiritual bank accounts, and they know it. It even has it in the Bible that, hey, don't turn a poor person away unawares, because unawares, sometimes you entertain angels. And I really believe that. I really believe that there are spirits sometimes that come in the form of homeless people just to test to see how, your character, how giving that you are. Because giving is one of the ingredients of prosperity. And being thankful, gratitude, that's an ingredient to prosperity. Be thankful for what you have so that you will be given more. But the universe is intelligent. If it gives you something, that's the story of Cain and Abel. He said, if you would just do right, Cain didn't want to. That's how people are. If you just do right, man, you'll get everything that you want. It says, Cal, U.S. Court of Appeals in the 8th Circuit number, in the other words, October 28, 19, it was once again legal to contract for payment in gold. I think that in Florida, the governor there is trying to pass some laws to make, put gold back into circulation to conduct transactions with, and maybe just a test to see what kind of response he's going to get to it. I don't really think that'll ever happen. Not as long as you have a technologically advanced society. That would work if we weren't as advanced technologically as we are. But I think within their framework of their system, they're never going back to gold and silver. Ever. Ever. Not as long as the Federal Reserve has a chokehold on our federal government. It's not. Not as long as the Zionist Jews own the banking system in the entire world. Is not. Nothing is going to change. Them are some real powerful people. Y'all talking about Donald Trump. Donald Trump has been approached by some real powerful people to let him know that on this planet you're not as strong as you think that you are. Yeah, you're the president of the United States, but there's something greater than you still. And I think he's been introduced to that. And I have no doubt in my mind that he has been. And y'all got to just be aware of that fact that there are powers behind the scenes, man. There's some very, very, when I was doing the foreclosure, I had some weird things happen to me, and it made me understand that the banks control the courts. They control the courts. That's why you ain't gonna win on these. Why are the courts helping the banks so much? Ask yourself that question. They be helping them like a motherfucker. They don't show up for court, nothing happened to them. We don't show up to court. You lost your property. You go to jail. Them niggas get all kind of motherfucking extensions. We don't get shit. We fuck up one time. That's it. Look at the kind of questions you get. Somebody said, anybody know any videos where successfully placing Standard Form 2425, Bill of Particulars, etc.? I mean, why would you think they'd let that get on video? It's like, the lack of common sense is just incredible to me. Why would you think they'll put private information into the public? That's private information that you're using. Use those bonds for a private purpose. You think that they're never going to let nothing into the public that exposes them. Stop looking for that. Y'all sound foolish. That's why I said earlier, you have to force them into a corner. You have to do everything you're supposed to do, give them forms, and then you got to get your ass back in court. They're not magically opening no doors just because you handed them some bonds. Let me tell you something. There was a chick, when I was in jail, they was doing the GSA bonds, bruh. Okay? There was a chick up in Oregon, in Portland, Washington. Washington State, I forgot her name. She had a whole business going. Well, she was doing the GSA bond. She'd send you a letter asking what it is that you did, whether or not you killed anybody, anything like that, and then tell you step by step the process. The person who I think gave the original instructions for filling it out was Pastor Tony King. At least I think so. I got the hold of the instructions. Somebody sent it to me, and they were cold as a motherfucker. That's all I remember, and I memorized them, what goes in what particular space. And I did that, and I didn't use SF 24, 25, and 25A. I used a 273, 274, and 275, which are the Miller Act bonds. But they changed those around, but it's just not that. After I did that, then I had to go into court and I had to speak for myself. See, you can't save nobody. They got to save themselves. And if they're not willing to save themselves, they're going to be stuck. They in there playing motherfucking Texas Hold'em and shit like that and lifting weights or trying to, do their time on the phone. That shit not going to work. And not in something like this. This right here is individual type of information. It is all dependent upon you. Ain't nobody saving you. You calling yourself the motherfucking sovereign. You think somebody coming to save your motherfucking ass? Ain't nobody saving you. You got to save yourself. Nobody rescued me. Nobody rescued me. You got to contend with all that. You got to contend with that fear. You got to discipline yourself so you don't waste your time. You make every day count. You learn something new every day. You got to work on your spirituality. Help people around you if you have the capacity to help them. Lead the prayer circle. I led the prayer circle. I help people with their cases. All kind of shit. I made every day count. And sometimes I was contending with despair, asking questions. Why is this happening to me? What did I do to deserve this? But I found solace in scripture and Proverbs and the Psalms, reading, and then asking myself, is there any truth to this? Can I put this to the test? And let me tell you, it is true. Miracles do happen. People do get houses discharged. People do acquire automobiles. People do get rid of those credit card bills. Yes, it happens. It happens. It happens. People do get, I've seen the checks, OID checks back. I've seen them, but it's only based off the effort you're willing to put in that particular matter that you're going through. You gotta, and then because like when you're dealing with the courts, okay, the reason you have to read case law because you got to get a deep understanding of the principles. Once you understand the principles, then you can identify how to utilize that principle in your particular matter if it is warranted to be used in that particular matter. But you got to see how because the principle is what brings the different case laws together, is the principle. That's the bonding glue between them. It could be totally different matters, but the same principles are being utilized in each of those matters. And then you see how the courts rule on that, and they're consistent with their ruling. So if you're looking for a desired result, then you have to use the principle of cause and effect. For every cause, there's an effect. For every effect, there's a cause. Do what I do, and you'll get what I get. And that is what reading case law is all about. You're doing what somebody else did to get what they get, the desired result that you're looking for. This is why procedures are in everything. And so, those things like I'm just seeing people learn the script, walk in court, and they're making a mockery of some of the things that I teach, about going in there and asking the court what jurisdiction you're operating under, or, using the Sixth Amendment as a defense. And then they're going there and making a mockery, reading the shit off a piece of paper and all that kind of stuff. Hey, I know time is maybe short. You got to do what you do. But if they putting all this shit up on the internet, and some of it, a lot of this shit I think is fake too. I think they put up some fake shit to discourage you from doing shit. And you got to be able to see through that shit too. You got to be able to see through that. You can't be a leader if you can't see snakes in the grass. How you going to lead some people? And you can't see the motherfucking snakes. You ain't no leader. A leader can see snakes. A leader know how to guide. A leader know where all the potholes are at. Where all the landmines are at. Where all goddamn rattlesnakes in the grass are at. Because they all out there. And you need to know where they're at if you want to lead people. I like that right there, Michelle. It says in First Timothy, she put a quote up of Paul, whom I'm not that fond of Paul, but Paul do say some good things. He says, I'm not going to discount everything he says. I just contend with him where he contradicts Jesus. That's why I don't put Paul over Jesus, and he contradicts Jesus a lot. And so I have to call that out, and that's y'all job to call that out too. But 1 Timothy 4:16, take heed unto thyself and unto the doctrine, continue in them, for in doing this thou shalt both save thyself and that hear thee. See, now she was able to discern, hopefully, that that is the law of cause and effect. That's the principle in operation, and that's what he's saying in a different time. He's saying that, you have a mentor. That's why mentors are important. Do what I do and you'll get what I get. It's a universal principle. It's a natural law. So it applies to everything. It applies to everything. Whether you're dealing with a case law, whatever, your matter, whatever. In order to find the desired results, you need to find the person who already walked that path and follow what he did. He said racism exists. Yeah, I think racism. I don't listen. White people are supposed to help white people. Indian people are supposed to help Indian people. Mexican people are supposed to help their people. They are people. They supposed to put their people before anyone else. Your problem in the black community is you don't. You don't. So you wondering what's wrong with everybody else. But as usual, that's the problem that we have. We don't ever put a mirror to ourselves. We try to point fingers at everybody when we are the ones that have the problem because we don't put all of our own first like everybody else does. That's where the racism is coming in. You getting mad because they put in their people first. And when we should all be in our own groups doing things ourselves and putting our people, and we'll be more respected for that. But we ain't going to be respected asking for handouts and shit like that, trying to stay on welfare. They're never going to respect us as a people. Destroying our families. How you going to respect the people doing all that shit? Jokingly, I told my wife I was going to write a cease and desist letter to Capital One because they keep sending pre-approval credit letters. They're not approving me, Dash. Yeah, I hate when they do that shit too. Fucking up your credit, getting motherfucking, an inquiry on your credit report. Them inquiries can add, they do a little damage and shit, they can fuck up your credit score, and I don't like that shit either. I be getting mad, I get mad about that too, but yeah, they do that. They do that. But hey, look, I'm not going to keep y'all long tonight. I just wanted to do a rant. I have a best friend that passed away, and we grew up together, man. And he just he that's it's hard to believe. Let me tell y'all this, man. Time is a priceless commodity that very few people use properly. And when you think about it, it's life's only true personal property. When you die, all that prosperity is going to go to charity because judgment day is life's only guarantee. So I enrich myself spiritually instead of materialistically. So when I leave this third density, I know I'll spend my time eternally. The reason I keep a message, a spiritual message in my program is because I understand that this UCC ain't the end all be all. It's a stepping stone. Your real target that should be before your mind's eyes, immortality, self-perfection, and reaching, elevating yourself spiritually, becoming more aware of who you truly are, not this meat suit. That's what you should be spending your time doing. And the time they use making us work and do all this other shit for money is a distraction. Because you weren't sitting here for that. You wasn't sitting here to work 9 to 5 jobs and shit. You think God sent you down to earth for that shit? He didn't send you down there for that. But me going out into the world trying to make something of myself, making mistakes, getting arrested, doing a lot of things, and when something like this happens, it really reminds you of who the people in your life you truly love, and who truly loved you, and you shared so much of your life with, so much of your happy times with, and we go on and we have our own families, and sometimes we move to different cities, and and then but the bond never breaks, because in our heart, in our mind, I know you're there. I'm gonna see you. I'm gonna get to you. I know you're there. Every now and then I get a word about you. You okay? It's just really nice and comforting to know that you're okay. That you're okay. And then one day you're not okay. And you realize I took things for granted. If you have a loved one that you have not seen in a long time, whether or not there's animosity or not. And I didn't have any animosity with my friend at all. It was just a thing where, life just took us in different directions. And I don't think that's an excuse, but y'all know we grow up. We kind of think, sometimes I think, I do think I'm immortal, and I think my friends are immortal too. I don't think there's nothing ever going to happen to them. That's the kind of shit that happens to other people, and then it happens to you. And we all standing in line with a ticket to punch. The Muslims have a very beautiful analogy of death, that the people are like leaves on a tree. And every time a leaf falls off the tree and falls to the ground, someone dies. So you don't know when your leaf is going to blow off the tree. And you don't know when that person you really love's leaf is going to blow off the tree. So go and, go see that person, man. Tell them you love them. Forgive. If there's any animosity, forgive that shit. What does that shit mean, man? I mean, if they didn't do nothing really serious, like, fuck your wife or some shit. I don't know, fuck your husband or whatever, you know what I'm saying? I understand there could be some transgressions that can be really egregious, all right? I understand. But if it doesn't fall into any of those categories, even if it did, you need to still forgive, because forgiveness is not for them, it's for you. And you need to clean your heart, and so that blessings can start to fill it again. The blessings can't fill your heart if it's being occupied with animosity and hatred. And, if your heart is occupied with those things, how are you going to let the joy in your heart? Because your life is going to reflect what's in your heart. So you're not forgiving the person for them, you're forgiving them for you. You're releasing that negative energy to make space for positive energy to leave into your life, and allow God to handle it. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. All that is another, and the Lord in that context is just talking about meaning law. It means that what goes around comes around. It's going to happen, guaranteed. Maybe not in the way that you think it's going to happen or that you would like for it to happen, but it's going to happen. And it's going to have the same effect on them that it had on you. So you need to release that energy. Because you know why you have to have those lessons? Because you have to understand that cause and effect, and what goes around comes around, and do unto others as you would have them to do unto you. As you mature as an adult and you learn that those principles are actually exist and they are real, that's why older people have wisdom over younger people, because we've experimented with the principle, found it to be true, learned how to govern ourselves accordingly so we don't have things to come back on us and things like that. Treat everybody with respect, treat everybody, do all these different things so it won't come back, so that we can have a peaceful and happy life. Because at the end of the day, shouldn't that be what you want to be? You want to be happy? Isn't that really the ultimate goal? To be happy? And that what we're all pursuing, happiness? What makes you happy? I went to the wake today and visited my friend. and I almost didn't recognize him. They had him puffed up with the stuff for a second. I was like, I was looking at it. I was like, dang, I was at him. But then as I got up on him, it was him, and his wife doesn't know what happened. He had some tragedies happen in his life, and I think he just gave up on life. And I was feeling guilty, that I didn't check on him, man. But anyway, thank you for listening to that. I needed to share that with y'all. I appreciate it. I appreciate all my listeners. It's the first time something like this happened in my neighborhood. All the people that I grew up with, ain't none of us died. This is the first one. And it hit me kind of hard, harder than I thought it would. And, don't let time pass you by. It's a priceless commodity. Make every day count. Don't discount the friends you grew up with. And, just forgive. Learn how to forgive. Just learn how to forgive, man. And check on people, Check on people, your loved ones, that helped you in life, that was there, that you share good times. That every time you think back in your mind a happy time you had when you were young and everything, that person's in that memory. Check on them. Peace to the God.